Greetings friends, it is so good to have you here on my channel. If you are new, my name is Emily.e.finke and I am an opera singer and connoisseur and enthusiast of all vintage pop culture. You can learn about that on my different videos here on my YouTube channel or on my website, link in the description. For those of you who are returning, it is so good to see you again. And I am so excited for this video. Thank you so much to those who watched my video from last year, yes it was last year, of putting on the Ritz, comparing 3 different versions of that. You can check that video out up here if you haven't seen it. But I apologize that it has taken me a year to get around to filming another one of these. But thank you for your patience, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's video, comparing 3 versions of That's All. The song was written in 1952 by Brandt and Bob Haymes, though Bob Haymes gets most of the acclaim for the song, having written a precursor to the song, an early version of it, so to speak, called C'est tout. I just want to pause the video here for a second and attempt to clarify something. After I recorded this, I realized that I had seen differing information on the internet, and as I did quite a bit more digging and research to try and come up with an answer, I cannot find one. So the best that I can understand is that C'est tout was copyrighted in 1952, and That's All came out in 1953. I'm not positive if that is correct or not, but that is, to the best of my understanding, what is going on and why there seems to be a confusion about the dates online. I'm assuming it was a French song. I can't find any information about that song. Maybe it was just a thing to do at the time to write French songs. I'm not sure. I can't find any information. But so many people have recorded this song through the years. But it's just a wonderful standard jazz. Most of the time when you hear somebody record it, it's very jazzed, although I'm not sure when it was written if it was intended to be jazz. There's definitely elements of jazz, and it was the 1950s when that modern jazz sound really started to come out, and most of the singers and artists that recorded it, being later into the 50s and the 60s, definitely brought more of that out of the song as they recorded it, as the 60s progressed into just more complex jazz sounds, and you'll get to hear that a little bit later in the video. It wasn't until Bobby Darin recorded it in 1959 that it really started to get some notice, and it went on to be recorded by a lot of people and used in several instances of pop culture throughout the years. And just before I get into that, this is a bit of a disclaimer that while yes, I am a musician, I am a songwriter, I am an opera singer, I am not going to be breaking down theoretically, really, anything that's going on in these songs. This is more for the general layperson to enjoy, so you don't have to know music theory to know what I'm going to talk about.
I can only give you love that lasts forever.
So yeah, this is in 1962. This is a little later in Frank Sinatra's career, obviously. He's a little older, and so right initially, things that stand out are that his voice isn't as smooth as when he was younger. Me personally, I'm not a huge Frank Sinatra fan, and I'm not bringing that into like my perception of his version of this song. I'm just clarifying, I'm not the biggest fan of Frank Sinatra. However, I do enjoy a lot of his music from when he was younger. I think he did have a good voice when he was young. He definitely wasn't a crooner, and to me, this song seems to benefit from more of a crooning sound. He doesn't sound bad on this song, but just the things like age, his voice didn't age very well. It lost that bit of mellow sound as he got older and became a bit brassy, for lack of a better word. you could just tell that there were some notes that he wasn't quite hitting well. All that to say, it didn't sound like he was struggling. For the place in his life that he was, I think he did sing it exceedingly well. Looking at the accompaniment of the song, this is on his album called Strings and Sinatra, or Sinatra and Strings, and so the strings are definitely very prominent in this version, which is something that I like, being a string player. But I want to especially point out the intro to the song. This phrase of music that was used at the beginning pops up here and there throughout the song and is also used at the end, but I think it is gorgeous. And from a songwriting perspective, when a song has an intro that doesn't utilize a melody of the song itself, it makes it more interesting. There are plenty of times where it works to use a part of the song as the intro and is even better than using something different. But there is something about that lilt at the beginning of this song that is so beautiful and adds such a nice element and quality of richness and elegance to the song. So the way that each of those different sections of instruments comes in, you have your woodwinds, and maybe even a reed in there. It sounded like maybe a flute and a clarinet and something else that I couldn't really pick out. If you listen throughout the rest of the song, you can hear a little bit of percussion, not very much. It's very light, very reminiscent of Frank Sinatra's earlier days, singing light jazz and pop songs with the big bands that didn't incorporate as much percussion back then. But as time went on, especially about in the 40s, definitely in the 50s and 60s, and especially with jazz music, the percussion instruments became more prominent, with a lot of jazz songs just being sung with something like as simple as piano and drums. So Frank Sinatra's incorporates that a little bit. You know, he's moving with the times. It does have a little bit more of that modern sound than his early music would have, but it definitely is very reminiscent of a more old-fashioned sound. Definitely more orchestral with the strings and the woodwinds. One other thing I wanted to point out as far as the arrangement and the instrumentation goes is that at one point I believe I hear background voices, and it was something that on my 100th time of listening to it I heard, and I went, oh, that is so beautiful. I love the use of background voices. It adds so much depth to the sound of the accompaniment, and I think this is very beautiful, so I just want to play that part real quick.
I'm asking in return, you'll be glad to know.
That was at about 2:20 or 2:21 time mark on the song that you can hear those background voices. To sum up this song, this version of the song, is that Sinatra's version is very rich and elegant, has a very elegant sound to it. You know, a little different than some of the jazzier versions that we'll hear later. And I think that it works really well with this song for maybe a more sophisticated sound. Frank did a good job of not trying to step too far out of his comfort zone with this song, staying within where I think he was at the time. And so we're going to go ahead and move on to the next version, which is Mel Tormé.
I can only give you love that lasts forever, and the promise to be near.
That song just melts me, that version at least. I just love Mel Tormé. But as far as arrangement, Mel Tormé's is the best, in my opinion. This is just a really great example of incorporating other instruments into jazz arrangements. I think it's something that a lot of people who sing jazz miss. I don't mean that in a bad way, because I know that there are some instances and sounds that people go for when singing jazz, and they want to keep things simple, but when you incorporate other instruments tastefully, such as in this version, it adds a complete other dimension that I don't know if a lot of jazz singers, especially today, just don't think about, don't know how to utilize. But I think it's something that's sorely missed, is arrangements with bigger instrumentation than just piano, bass, and drums. Again, not that there's anything wrong with that in certain circumstances, but I think a lot of people just get stuck in this mentality of, oh, jazz, piano, bass, drums, and stick with that even when a song could handle more instrumentation, and That's All is definitely a song that can handle it. It does not get overpowered by the extra instrumentation. Obviously, jazz is what Mel Tormé sang, and it's what he sang best, so this song just fits in perfectly. I mean, just from that opening, like, you couldn't help hear anything else but jazz. Let's listen to that again. There you go. You got your drums, you got your piano, and you got your bass. And I love that. I love when songs build, because it gives you a climax rather than just being steadily along. Like, if you start with everything, and I know some people say, that's so cliche, like, you can do whatever you want with music. Technically you can. You can do whatever you want, if the song warrants it. But most songs do not. People need a climax. It's just inherent in people's mentality, whether you realize it or not. It's something that's subconscious, and with art we need to play to that subconscious, because that is what makes things memorable. I think it does an excellent job in opening like that, catching your ear. You know what it is right off the bat, but it gives it room to grow. So specifically some things that Mel Tormé does in singing the song that lend to that jazzy ebb and flow kind of a feel that's constantly tugging and releasing you, that Frank's doesn't have, it's just kind of a pop song, is he holds consonants. And by that I mean, listen to somebody like Barbra Streisand, probably the best known person for doing this. Most people hold vowels when they sing. E, A, A, O, U, they're the easiest things to sing on, and the consonants are just there to finish the words. So that's why most of the time, high notes, big notes, end notes, the climactic notes, they're on vowels. And we tend to break words up like that when writing music or performing, is to give more emphasis to those vowels, because or write words breaking up with the longer notes on the vowels, because we're able to actually sing. Something that a lot of jazz singers do, like I said, Mel Tormé does this, you'll hear Johnny Mathis does it a little bit too in a little bit later in this video, but he holds the consonants.
And the only heart I own, for you and you alone, that's all, that's all.
And the other thing he does is, when he's holding those consonants, a lot of the time he'll do them on a straight tone, and then he'll go to vibrato, and that gives you a little bit of tension, and then it releases the tension. And that's something like I was talking about in songs, or in entertainment, really, no matter what art form it is, we need climaxes, we need tension and release of tension, and this comes from many different places. This comes from the structure of, to use an example of music, since that's what we're talking about, the structure of the song, the chord progressions that are used, The way that it's performed, i.e. the singer singing it and how they sing it, and the instrumentation used. There's so many different variables that go into it. And just one of those variables can be off and it'll still be a good version, but it won't stick in your mind like a version like this that gets everything right. Let's get into a little bit later in the song when he incorporates some other instruments. You can hear some, I think there's a clarinet in there, and I think there might be even a harp, and definitely some strings. The strings become very prominent near the mid to late portion of the song.
If you're wondering what I'm asking in return, dear, you'll be glad to know that my demands are small. Say it's me that you adore, for now and evermore, that's all. That's all.
Mel Tormé definitely adds in a lot of little passing tones here and there in the song. Some of them he does change the melody of completely, not unrecognizable from the song, but he does change the melody, especially on the reprise of the bridge. No, I'm sorry, the reprise of the verse, so the last verse. He adds in several different notes that alter the melody. But I think it's really well done in that it makes it interesting and climactic in the sense that it has just changed keys, which is one of my favorite things about this song. It makes me so excited because I like how it changes keys. Sometimes people write key changes in so that they trick the ear, so to speak, and it doesn't stand out. But I like this key change because it does stand out and gives it more of that release of tension that I was talking about in building the climax. Listen to the way that Mel Tormé redoes or alters a few notes of the melody to give it a little bit of interest.
And love time can never destroy. To know that my demands are small. Say it's me that you adore, for now and evermore, that's all.
I keep saying this word, but it's climactic, and it really lends the story to telling of the song to telling more of a story rather than just being a song. Now, structurally for the song, Mel Tormé does do a couple things differently than Frank and Johnny Mathis do. Each one of these are different in this way. Frank does the song pretty much just straight through as it was written. Mel Tormé repeats, so his version of the song is quite a bit longer. So if you look at the song, it's like you have two verses, you have a bridge, and then you have a verse. And so Mel Tormé sings all that, and then what he does is he sings that bridge again, and then sings that final verse again, but the final verse is the one that goes up the key change. Mel Tormé's version of the song, broken down, like I said, it is my favorite version of the song. I just think the song lends itself so well to having a sound like that, and whoever arranged that song did a spectacular job of doing so tastefully while building a climax and telling a story with the arrangement and keeping it with that jazz sound that fits so nicely with Mel Tormé's voice while not going over the top. So let's go ahead and get into our final version, which is Johnny Mathis.
I can only give you love that lasts forever.
One thing that kind of stands out differently from this one is that it's actually more string and percussion based with very little piano used, which is something that, though not prominent in Frank Sinatra's, was definitely heard. And on this one, it's there. It doesn't stand out near as much, and obviously not as much as Mel Tormé's. Mel Tormé's being very piano forward, prominent, whatever word you want to call it. Johnny Mathis definitely has a similar way of singing to people like Mel Tormé, you know, with that jazz sound of kind of holding the consonants and adding in little passing tones, little riffs, if you want to call them that. He does them quite well, and I think add a nice little touch and a nice little bit of personality to this song, making it unique to him. One thing that I noticed, though, about listening to this, and this is one of the reasons why it's not my favorite thing that he's done, is it sounds like he's trying to croon it, because that's what the song is wanting. The song is just like a person. It has a personality, it has its wants and its needs, and if you fulfill those wants and needs, you'll come out with a stellar version. The thing is that I think he could have done this so much better, and that's the thing, is that I don't think he's a bad singer. Like I said, I listen to things that he's done. This just isn't my favorite thing, and it makes me sad because I think it could have been so much better. Maybe had it been a little bit later. I'm not sure if this was just a time in his career, you know, what was going on. Maybe it just wasn't the right sound for him. But had this been recorded a little later in his career, I think it would have gone better, at least in my opinion. The arrangement is so-so. It's okay. If he had had an arrangement like Frank Sinatra's, and Frank Sinatra's was recorded 3 years after, I think it would have been better for him. Maybe this was the way they wanted to sound it. If so, I'm sorry, even though I have a feeling everybody associated with that song is dead, but it fell flat, in my opinion. A couple of ways that it did that was I said that it sounded like Johnny Mathis was trying to croon it. When he was trying to croon, it came out very nasally.
Say it's me that you'll adore for now and evermore. That's all, that's all.
I think if he had sung it more like he sang some of his other songs, I think it would have been better. As far as that, there's not a whole lot different with this song. This intro does utilize a very small part of the song, a very small part of the melody, but I like it, and with the strings playing it, it's very, very pretty. I think that the instrumentation on it is a good choice, especially for Johnny Mathis. It goes really well together with his voice, and one thing I do like about this that Frank Sinatra and Mel Tormé didn't do so much is this has a very nice instrumental interlude. And this one, like I said, does have a key change. It's following the instrumental interlude. Though this one doesn't build as much or have as big of a climax as Mel Tormé's version, having that little instrumental interlude allows it to be picked up again for the key change. And even though the key change is actually rather unnoticeable, it does subconsciously give you that little bit of a feeling of a climax. So structurally, this version goes through the whole song and then reprises the last verse with a tag of the last half of that verse. And I hate to sound like I'm picking on this song. I'm not trying to, but it's there, so I'm going to point it out. The lyrics are changed in one spot. It's so slight. It took me so many times of listening to it before I went, wait, that doesn't make any sense. At the end of the bridge, in where the lyrics say, "A love time can never destroy," he sings, "A love time can only destroy." And that doesn't make any sense to me, because isn't the whole point of the song, from a lyrical standpoint, saying that this is all I can offer you is myself, is my love, and no matter what, like, time can never destroy that love. And he says, "A love time can only destroy." And it is actually a little bit upsetting, because it ruins the sentiment of the song. Because if you just think about it, a love time can only destroy. Is he saying a love that nothing else in the world can destroy except time? But then you're making it seem like the longer time lasts, the more chance there is of losing that love. I don't mean to get philosophical, but that is the importance of lyrics, And especially on this song that is so lyric driven, it confuses me why his lyrics are different, because they don't make sense. In fact, they take something away from the song. So other than that, there's not much else to pull apart with this song except things that I've already said with the others. The arrangement does utilize the strings and the percussion well in suiting Johnny Mathis's style. Though I really wish that Johnny Mathis had recorded again or recorded it a little later, because I think he could have done a much better job on it. Alright, so that is pretty much it for this video. I hope you enjoyed my little commentary. If you learned something, let me know. If you have anything to add, I would love to hear from you. If there's a different version that you think is quite notable, leave me a comment and tell me who it is and why. I also post covers of old songs, such as That's All, which you can find here on my YouTube channel. I post once a week, so subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you get notified whenever I post. And I will see you all later. Bye!